Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back once again to another fabulous episode of Stories Around Azeroth. I, as always, am Pete Titans Creed Nethercoat, joined by the smallest of all the gnomes this side of the Eastern Kingdom, one Mr. Frazley Tastic. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing great, but as Jason can attest, I'm probably one of the tallest gnomes at Azeroth.
Well, yeah, I mean, you are probably one of the tallest gnomes, but since you play a gnome where you are so tall, I thought we could keep going that way, and you can be the smallest one. As Mr. Frazley has alluded to, it is once again an honour and a privilege to have a special guest once again, and we are joined by Jason, otherwise known as Shieldwalled, from the Starting Zone. How are you doing, sir?
What's up, gents? Thanks for inviting me. Glad to be here. I'm doing well. Kind of exciting. It's slow news week, but exciting time around WoW. So always fun to talk about what is happening.
I think it's been a slow news month. I think everybody's just been watching the WoWhead post slowly drip by, going, "There's been another alpha Shadowlands build, but it's still encrypted."
Which is why I think when they said 8.3.5 this past Wednesday, I was like, oh.
Did you get
WoWhead?
How many April Fools did you guys get caught out by?
Just one. WoWhead.
Yeah, I think just that one. I was in the middle. I was doing my normal evening WoW stuff and doing raids and dungeons and whatnot. And I just kind of glanced through it. I'm like, oh, that looks cool. And then I didn't think about it. And it was still March 31st in the States. So I don't know. I don't think that was fair play. But.
So, well, Japan always starts theirs when it's like March 31st here because it's always they're so far ahead. Right. So quite a few. I didn't get caught out by any. However, the one about the green Meccano Strider, someone in my guild got caught out by that, and I had to turn around and go, because they just in guild the other day went, "Where can I get explosives?" And they were like, well, somebody went, "Well, I'm quite sure an engineer makes it." And they were like, "Why?" And they were like, "Oh, the green Meccano Strider's been found." And I was like, dude, that's a classic mount that's been removed from the game. That no longer exists anymore. And he went, "Oh, but I saw this video." Yeah, it was an April Fool's, my dude. And they were like, "Oh, I guess I'm a little bit slow on the uptake then." And I was like, oh.
I might have that one actually because I bought
you won't have that one. That was one of the ones that was in, like, it's the fluorescent green Meccano Strider.
Okay, because like I've got like the plain mounts, like the ones before they added all the armor. Yeah. I've got some of those.
Yeah, no, fluorescent green was one of the ones that was in beta but never made it to live.
Oh, and then interesting tidbit about the WoW patch notes. 8.8.8.8 is actually the Google public DNS.
I knew I recognized that number.
Yeah, I was like, I was like, that's such a cool, geeky little inside thing that they like.
Mental. But yes, we are here, and as normal, we talk about what we've been up to in the last week. Well, since me and Frazley last talked, anyway. But Jason, you're not normally here with us. What have you got up to in the last week in a world filled with an 100% experience buff and everything else? Like,
I have been busy, keeping to the typical raid and dungeon schedule. My guild does 3 nights a week, and then I've been running an off night since Ny'alotha opened to do normal mode, alt night, bring your friends, just have fun, whatever. So I've been doing that, and then also, as far as the XP buff goes, taking advantage of that to the tune of a Mechanome DK.
Nice.
I created the Mechanome DK the day the buff got announced, which I guess was 2 weeks ago Friday. And I earned Heritage, I think Wednesday or Thursday last week. I got Heritage done. So that tune is basically finished. I'll run them through some time walking this coming week to just cap out and call it good. And I have moved on to, I have 3 Heritage armors left to get. And I have moved on to... High Mountain Tauren is next on my list. So
just overall 3 Heritage left to get? Or?
Yes, just Jesus. 3. I need Heritage armors for High Mountain, Zandalari Troll, and Vulpera. And
do you have done all the class, or like all the races at max already ready to go when they start bringing them in? Or is that something that you're still got to work on when they introduce it?
It kind of depends. I've sort of picked that stuff strategically, right? I assume that like humans, night elves, orcs, and undead are not going to get Heritage for a while because they got all the Warfront sets that are basically like 4 variations on Heritage armors for those races. So, I do have a Draenei ready to go, and just regular Darkspear Trolls. I have one of those ready to go. So if they're next, then yeah, I have all the core race heritage armors that are in the game now. So I don't know. Heritage is a really cool system. I really enjoy it as sort of this goalpost, this long-term thing to work towards. Cause it's just chill. You can do it at your own pace. And then it's this cool reward you have on your account forever. So it's something I've kind of prioritized in my downtime in the game.
And I've been enjoying the storyline of the quest. It gives each of the races more character.
Some are better than others.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, so I didn't talk about what I did last week, but essentially with the experience buff, I've just been leveling like mad now that raiding's essentially come to an end.
Oh, I'm terrified of that because you're getting closer to the pizza.
So in the last time I've spoken about what I've done, I've got my Horde Tauren to 120 and done the heritage on that. That's a cool storyline because it ties into the overall arc that's going on. I've got my Dwarf Death Knight to 120. I've done the heritage for that. It's an okay quest. It's more dwarven lore than it is an overarching story. And I've yesterday or last night I got the gnome to 120, and I've done that heritage as well. That's a cool line. I kind of feel like it's all over the place though, because the bad guy there seems to have taken control of Ulduar, got all the mechs, and then we just defeat him in the Halls of Stone. I kind of don't know where that was. It was cool. I do like it. I think the gnome heritage is, for what it is, I think it's quite cool.
Oh, the fact that we get a cool flight whistle going forward of the gnome air pilots. I think that they now have one of the coolest flight whistles.
Yeah, I just need to go activate Legion World Quests and BFA World Quests to be able to use it. I do wish that we could still use the flight whistle in old zones. I think that would be pretty cool. At some point, but not, even though we can fly, it kind of defeats the point when you've got a flight whistle, but there you go. Oh my god, yeah. But no, the gnome actually was number 18 to max level. It takes me to 4 races on Alliance side that I've got left to get to max level in terms of having the whole spread of Alliance, which is Dark Iron, Mecha Gnome, Void Elf, which I've got to 42, 43 yesterday, and there's one more. Dark Iron. It's an allied race, I can tell you that much. Oh, Coltiran.
That's a fun one. And
yeah,
they have cool animations for casting.
That's pretty cool because mine's a shaman. Yeah, there's just so much to do at the moment. I tell you one thing that I did do though is I went and trying to farm gold. We had the big discussion on this last week, Fraz, about goddamn trying to farm herbs in Nazjatar and the army of multi-boxes that just eat a node before you can even get there. Yeah. So, as anyone who's in your Discord would know, I went and farmed an actual ton of old raids this week. I did Molten Core because I still missed the 2 legendaries from there. I did Blackwing Descent because I was in the area. And then I did LFR and all the highest difficulty from Cataclysm, LFR and the highest difficulty from Miss, and then all of the difficulties from Siege because that's where they introduced Mythic and you can do normal, heroic, Mythic. And then I did all of that for Warlords. That took too long. And then for Legion, I just did LFR. Even though I can do like loads of Mythic and I've got to go in there and just like tidy up for the Legion stuff, it's quite nice. It's made me about 90,000 gold in the span of a few days for doing that, just from raw gold. I think if you just want to conserve your time though, it might just be worth doing Siege upwards because the stuff below will go a lot faster, but you won't make as much raw gold from it. But otherwise, it's been fun. Fun fact. In the first wing of Argus in LFR, the actual teleport to the council is broken. And you can kill the dogs, you can do the first boss, but you can't get to the council.
Ooh.
And having a little look around on Reddit as well, it's also like broken on other difficulties as well. Yeah. Just a tad. But it means that I've discovered, because the dogs have an ability to drop their mount on LFR, which means that I've got another mount I can farm.
The only problem with that is didn't Star Trek teach us that if your teleport is broken, that you'll go in and there'll be like a good and a bad version of you that walks out.
I mean, that's true. However, the teleport is non-existent. It's not broken. It's just not there.
Oh, okay, okay. So there won't be like two versions of everybody out in that raid.
It's true, Frazley. There won't be a good version of me wandering around Azeroth.
Or are you? Oh, I just got what you should.
What about you, Fraz? What have you been up to this week? I've talked well enough already.
So I think so I have Frazley's heart up to almost to 80, and his cloak is now rank 11, and thanks to Cap, I have now done both of the Reeking of Visions achievement. So I think we've completed both Stormwind and Orgrimmar all the way through.
Right.
And now I have my second mask, the Face of Dark Imagination, and I'm also working on my Oldham pet, trying to get him up to Reginald. So the one that everybody else has, who's been doing every day, and for me, I'll have it by the time that
you'll do it every now and again.
Yeah, and by the time the Shadowlands beta comes out, I'll finally have that pet.
You'll be in Shadowlands playing that. So.
Yeah. And then today, Sai, Corinzi, Michael, and Lucas and I went in to do some mythics today, and Sai's been teaching people how to go through mythics, kind of showing them what are mythics like, if you get people more comfortable with doing it, and just saying like, hey, here's what a mythic is like. And I did a mythic +5 of Junkyard, first time going into that one. That one has some nasty mechanics at times, and Sanguine I hate.
I think this is where the disparity between where the sort of level that we play comes into the game. I'm not sure how much Jason is, considering I've seen some of Jason's streams where he's doing mythic raiding. I presume he's on like the same sort of level that I'm at. So like has cleared all of heroic Ny'alotha and does 15s on a weekly basis on his characters. If I turned around to you and I said that I just randomly pugged a 16 Junkyard and it was like 8 seconds off a +2, like the disparity is because I know all the intricacies of what my class can do.
Yeah.
And what I need to expect. You didn't play. You don't pug dungeons for a start, and I'm going to presume that you didn't do Operation Mechagon when it came out in 8.2.5.
Nope, I've only done the second half of Mechagon for the Mechagon Heritage Armor, and then this was the first time doing the first half with the Junkyard.
Yeah, I'm sure Jason can mention stuff itself, but a lot of it is feeling comfortable with the mechanics themselves, just like raiding and everything else.
Yeah.
I said in Karenzi's Twitch that I had a feeling you guys would be able to clear up to a level 6 easily, because any 445 gear should be able to do +6s with ease if you know what you're doing and you're comfortable.
And we finished Junkyard. We didn't time it to a chest, but we finished it.
Yeah. And how did you find it? Because this is like, that's the furthest you've gone in as an organized group and not been, taken, like pushed through.
Yeah, I enjoyed it. Like I like that the visions are helping with stuff, and definitely I encourage DBM. I installed things like the DBM interrupt timers, so it is definitely helpful to have add-ons that are just watching out for you, because there are times that I get distracted, and when an add-on comes up, be like, hey, interrupt. It's like, okay, there we go. I feel like I'm able to stay on top of what's going on, and it's nice when it says, hey, you should just get out of that way. It's why I keep GTFO on as well. Even if I'm supposed to be in the bad, I know it usually goes off when I need to be out of the bad. There's a few places where GTFO just gets overactive.
Yeah, I mean, it's a system that you have to work your way up and through, right? You're not going to just step in and know what you're doing. If you do the dungeons during level up, you don't get a sense of what actually happens in them most of the time. You don't see most of the mechanics, or they're not that punishing anyway. So you got to start somewhere, I think, is really the idea. And you have to learn the intricacies of the dungeon first, and then be able to put on, layer on top of that the affix combos. Sanguine sucks. It sucks. It's a tank mechanic primarily. The tank really has to be awake and moving stuff around and preparing for the sanguine to drop. DPS can help by evenly killing the mobs off so they don't have a chance to heal. But man, like there's so much stuff in BFA dungeons that just stands there and shoots at you. They have like a gun or some kind of ranged weapon or whatever. They
you can't
spam
get
cast.
silence to move it, and you have to prioritize to kill it. It's really annoying.
Yeah, Sanguine wasn't bad in Legion for the most part, but they definitely designed stuff to take more advantage of how annoying Sanguine is in BFA. So it's it's just one of those things. It's like, okay, Sanguine week. All right, it's a tank week. Tank's got to be awake. Tank's got to be on top of this mechanic. Otherwise, everybody's gonna have a bad time.
It's quite annoying because I feel, I've said this before, that I feel like 8.3, the 8.3 changes they've done to Mythic Dungeons and the way the gear scales now that Titan Fortune is gone is the best change that's come to the game by far, because you're not relying on an RNG, because there's nothing worse than pushing to do a 15 and then in the box at the beginning of the next week you get something which doesn't even Titan Forge as high as the effort that you've put in. So it's by far the best change that they've done. I just feel like the next best change they could do is to give Mythic Dungeons an easier curve, rather than like past a certain difficulty the health and the damage just spikes. An easier curve would push people to, like, even people who don't want to just do 15s for the sake of doing a 15, like, just allow people to just go as far as they're willing to go with a smoother curve, because it gives you a better sense of fulfillment when you can actually push rather than get to a 15 and because the spike is so high because you managed to do a 13 at +2 time, and then you just get ruffle stomped by 15 just because of the actual percentage modifiers just gone too high that you're not used to. A slightly easier curve, even if it means that they have to push the rewards further back, but having more cosmetic rewards would be nice. Maybe, I don't know, if they're going to have maybe another color variant for the raid set for that expansion, for that tier, sorry. So that, people who don't want to raid can still get that tier set, even if it's just another color variant on like the scale of LFR or something like that. Or give them the LFR tier set. I think that's worked wonders with the fact that the Black Empire set per class has been the LFR tier. It means that I don't have to run LFR to get that color tint.
Yeah, that was nice. Sure.
Yeah.
I mean, I think a lot
of people disagreed with that though. A lot of people didn't like that.
I don't know. I don't know why. I mean, maybe people who just kind of do LFR and that's their gameplay focus, and then it's like, well, this is the thing this is one of the things I'm chasing from doing this, and now I don't have to. I don't know, but I do think in this expansion they did a little bit of what you said. Like they pivoted from Legion, right? Because in Legion you got tyrannical or fortified at rank 10, and so if you were used to doing 7, 8s, 9s, suddenly 10 was culture shock, right? 10 was extremely hard compared to 9, and they've smoothed that over, but I do agree that they still have some more to go in that realm. And we find ourselves in a really weird place, I think, and based on my experience and talking to people that I play with and other people that I discuss the game about, Awakened is really good. Awakened is an awesome seasonal affix, and it makes me dislike doing keys that are below 10 because I can't use the obelisks.
Absolutely.
Like I want that stuff in, so maybe an idea going forward, if they're going to continue with seasonal affixes, is bake the seasonal affix into everything, and then maybe split the difference between tyrannical and fortified or something. So everything's beefier, but nothing's super punishing, and you can just kind of turn the knob up. I think if they can keep doing seasonal affixes that are as cool as Awakened, then everybody should get to see them.
I think the reason why Awakened rings so true with a lot of people is because it's that affix and the Battle for Desara Lore affix, the ones that everybody liked. But the reason that people like Awakening more is that it's just removed rogues from being a necessary comp. It's removed rogues, it's taken off invisibility pots. People still use them in certain comps to obviously get past a lot more stuff, but it's made things feel so much easier in the fact that I can just play with my friends. Well, I mean, I've always just done and played with my friends regardless, not taking rogues, but not having to be reliant on invisibility pots or anything like that, because invisibility pots have been a thing since challenge modes and mists. They were a necessity.
Yeah, nothing new. Yeah.
Yeah. But taking those out of it, taking rogues out of it, it's been brilliant. It frees up comps to do a lot more and everything else. Obviously, you're still going to have your top tier comps, which are going to be your Blood Death Knights, your Brewmaster Monks, your Windwalker, Demon Hunters are still in there, and because of the silly amount of damage they do. But for those people who do pugs, they're a lot more free to take whatever they want, which is good. Allowing more people to play a variety of stuff is also good. It means that people, again, aren't punished if they want to gear up whatever ult and not have to worry about anything. Yeah, it's good. It's getting there. It's just a shame that a lot of this stuff is come, again, at the end of the expansion. But the biggest concern, or not concern, but the biggest hate I hear from a lot of people is that Tyrannical and Fortified is still a thing. Let alone at the beginning of the affix selection. A lot of people don't like that.
Yeah, which I think is weird. I'm not sure the system really works too well without one or the other, or maybe cut the scaling in half and then they're both there all the time. I mean, what do you do without them? I don't. Maybe baseline health and damage of mobs and dungeons has to go up, and then that affects the other modes a lot.
The problem being is that when it's a tyrannical week, trash is fine. Trash is simple. You don't give a absolute care about trash. But if you wipe on a boss, it's so punishing that it can make or break a run. Whereas with Fortified, if you die, you can release and run back because you're not in the middle of a boss fight, and that won't make or break a run. And the bosses are pretty easy because you can just nuke them down, and you very rarely will cost you a run. And I think it's that, because that plus the mixture of some of the really bad affixes, like everybody's been going, Grievous is terrible, and again, it's like defensives and having a healer you can trust or having a healer that's good. It's everything makes or breaks a run. Like right. I hate explosives since they've done the unmacro change. I'm not sure people have said they've changed it back, but
well, you can at least tab target to them again. The first time they were out this season, you couldn't, and that week was a nightmare. But that has been fixed. I mean, it's supposed to be difficult, right? Like the whole point is it's supposed to present a high end challenge. So I don't know. I like the week-to-week puzzle. It's like, okay, here's a set of elements we're going to throw at you. How are you going to overcome it with these parameters? And I like that. I mean, I definitely, I can understand that complaint that like, well, this week feels so much worse than the other week, or this affix combo is so bad. But, I think maybe I do think Awaken takes some of the outliers and brings them in line a little bit more, because you can skip some of that really painful stuff, which is awesome. And maybe it's just a question of tuning or coming up with some different combos. I don't know. To me, I don't have a fundamental problem with the Fortified Tyrannical sort of rotation, that kind of rhythm that gets set. And then each week you have to take that into consideration as you plan out your route. Maybe there's just not enough variety to it. Maybe there's some other, entry into the rotation we could have that would break it up a little bit more.
I think whatever can... it's something that I thought of way back when they started doing the Mythic Dungeon Invitationals back in during Legion. And one of the big things that I wanted then was stuff that changes the map and changes the route of where you have to go, in the sense that the map itself changes.
Yeah.
Because my biggest problem with how the Mythic Plus stuff has come along is that it's fallen into the same problem that they tried to push with raids when they did the whole Titan Forging thing originally. We're running the same content week in and week out, and it's worked. It's a system that's worked, and I'm not going to fault Blizzard for the fact that they've done it, but I've done my dungeons at the beginning. This is why I like challenge modes, because at least challenge modes was always a constant challenge, and people had the leaderboards there as a thing to do regardless of where they were in that point of the expansion. My only problem with that was that they entered the feats of strength with titles way after I'd got my golds before anybody else has done it, and so it not retroactive. Grr. But it's running the same map, and the certain affixes, and I think the emissaries were the biggest ones that did that, and Awakening a little bit more so. They have changed the way that you do things, but you're still running the same dungeon, and there's no real variety. Whereas if you look back to Neltharion's lair, and once you take the river down, what if something that was on a given week had changed like some rocks had fallen in part of Neltharian's lair and actually changed where you have to go. So instead of everybody walking across that right-hand side wall, you've actually got to take some trash because you've got to go a specific way. And it actually changes things up on a time to different way. I mean, that might be more of a chore on Blizzard's part, but it would certainly mean that things are changing. Because even at regardless of what level of a fix you're at, if you go into Neltharian's lair, you're always going to crouch across that right-hand side of the wall.
Yeah,
regardless of what happens.
I'm kind of envisioning like in Shadowlands, they could set us up a Hunger Games scenario where the map changes and like okay, I see you're over here. Well, enough of our players have been here this past week, so now you got to go over here.
Yeah, like maybe it could be in a fix or something. Like,
yeah,
but I think the biggest thing I would agree with is that what you said, Jason, is that the seasonal fix should be the first one we come to, because, like you said, nobody wants to do an affix below 10. I think I did a +6 on my Death Knight because I was helping, and I was learning to tank, and I helped somebody out, and it was a base Mythic 0 as well, and it's just like I was there and told the girl, and it's just like, oh yeah, the pillars aren't here.
It's super weird like, now, right? Like it doesn't. Yeah, it feels wrong. Like there's an element that's missing. Yeah, I never really felt that any other season though. Like I think Awakened is just that good, where it's like it injects so much strategy into what you do. You know, you can kind of use it to play to your group's strengths or whatever you want to do. And that's why it's awesome. And I mean, who knows? We might not see seasonal fixes return in Shadowlands. I'm kind of making an assumption that we will, just because I think they've been reasonably successful, and I think they want to try to continue to inject life into the system. But also, you know, from what we saw at BlizzCon, everybody's going to have a choice of some kind of stealth or teleport ability, which will also pay off huge in those dungeons, which then means they can inject all kinds of weird stuff like that where you want to take advantage of those abilities. So it'll be cool to see how that stuff shapes up and you know, sort of how this systems and character stuff meshes with the dungeon and encounter design. Because if you can reasonably assume that everybody's stealthing around in a dungeon at least every 3 minutes or what have you, you can put some really interesting stuff in there that players can choose to either kill their way through or avoid entirely.
I'm already dreading LFG for Mythic Plus in Shadowlands being must be 1.5k Raider IO, must be this covenant for this ability.
Right. Yeah, you might get denied based on your covenant of choice or something. Or you might get, you know, you might not be able to see that at the outset, but you might get booted out of some groups if you don't have the right stealth ability or something.
Yeah, that's going to be one of the problems I see.
And I was thinking, I don't know if we've heard about it. Like, we know we have Torghast, which you can do single or in a group. Yeah. It would be cool if you could do Torghast Mythic Plus. That it would be like a different way, because then the map...
mean higher difficulties of Torghast instead of just the one that's given to us.
Yeah, and obviously you would have to like limit how far Torghast can go, but it would be cool to be able to use that change in Torghast. It would not be. I would not think that it would replace the current Mythic Plus system, but it would be another option you could do.
Well, based on what we've heard about it so far, I mean, I think Torghast has its own Mythic Plus scaling baked into it, because you can keep ascending, right? And as you get to the higher ascensions, I'm sure stuff gets way crazier. So we haven't seen enough of it to know yet, but it seems like, you know, that system is built to scale pretty high from what they were talking about at BlizzCon, which...
So something I'd like to... We do it quite often here, is we refer things to Final Fantasy 14. Because I've played it and I've done a fair amount of chunk of it and everything else. Something they had in the base version of the game is called Palace of the Dead. It wasn't base, but it was patched in. And it was where you could go on your own or with a group, and you scaled basically a tower full of levels. And it specifically put you in at level 1 in that tower, you and if your group of friends, and then you scaled up levels in that. So the level was actually... So the content that you're facing that, they kind of had a good idea of where you should be, depending on your level in there. And while it wasn't scaling to the same level of what WoW scaling we've come to know it as, it scaled up quite evenly to expect you at what level, and the challenges it posed with you got higher, and there were the odd thing that it actually threw at you. And I'm hoping it's something like that, where it's like small areas and then we go up a level, rather than what I'm envisioning it's going to be, where it's going to be something on the level of like Ice Crown Citadel type, the Frozen Spire type thing, where there's the big thing in the middle and you got to go and navigate to each rooms and deal with stuff in there, come back, and maybe be similar to how we're getting Horrific Visions. I feel like Horrific Visions are kind of like the demo for how we're going to see Torghast.
Yeah.
We get like a different level of that with a different thing, a different affix kind of hitting us per level, is how I foresee kind of Torghast being.
Well, and
Maybe. I think Horrific Visions they're way more set in stone, right? You only have 2 maps. It's the same map all week. It's the same madnesses every week. There's some random item placement and some random NPCs, but I mean, the way they were describing Torghast at BlizzCon made it sound basically like a full-on roguelite mode. And we'll see, how this actually pays off. I keep bringing this up because we're now 5 months past BlizzCon, and we haven't seen a blog post about Shadowlands since BlizzCon 5 months ago. So who knows if the plan they talked about is still in place or how that's shaping up. But I mean, my takeaway from spending a few months now with Horrific Visions versus the elevator pitch for Torghast is that they should be very different gameplay experiences. Horrific Visions is a system you kind of invest in and develop mastery over, and eventually you kind of trivialize most of the process as you gear and tech up and as your skill increases. Torghast should, based on the pitch we heard at BlizzCon, be this thing that always kind of presents this challenge, right? Like, because there's always that next step you can take. There's always that next hardest level. There's always that crazier combo that you could run into. If they could pay that off, I think that would be great, because it would be a really cool pillar of endgame play beside raids, dungeons, and PvP. Now, this really robust solo or group mode where, the stakes kind of shift from level to level and there's a big payoff at the end. It seems like the coolest idea that they put on the table for Shadowlands. So I'm interested to hear more. We'll see what we actually end up getting to play.
I think Torghast is by far the one thing that's been announced that everybody is excited for, like across the board.
Yeah.
My problem is that I always look at it because they've done it in previous expansions where they've brought in a mechanic close to the end of an expansion and which they've then iterated on, either in the future or down the line. Islands are a new form of Mists of Pandaria scenarios, etc., and everything else, and like scenarios have just changed from what they were in Mists to be a way to tell a single player story and something like that. They've just changed. And now I feel like when I say Horrific Visions, I feel like are going to be what Torghast might end up being. I'm not saying it's not going to be without its changes. Like, we know the art department's going to possibly be there. I'm envisioning we'll probably see the same layout of the internal things. We know it's based, Icecrown's architecture is based on what Torghast is. What I'm saying is that we know that Anima is going to be a fixed resource that we only get so much of a week. I think we're going to be restricted to how many times we can enter on a weekly basis, meaning that we'll probably have to pick up a key again to get in there per week. I'd love to have unlimited tries, have that ability to go in there, but I feel like we're going to hit a lot of the same problems that Horrifics had on day one, where it's going to be a limited amount of tries per week. People are going to be annoyed at the fact that they can't have a trial run and everything else, and it's going to require people to have their own keys and various bits and pieces to get in there, which means that you can't play with your friends unless they've got a key. But I mean, I'll probably do a lot of it solo because I play a demon hunter and they're overpowered and everything else, so they'll be able to probably clear a lot of stuff. But that's when I say it's going to be based off that system, because I look at that system as a whole and I feel like that's how it's going to be, because it's going to have to be something to do with Anima and your covenants and everything else. They're not going to just, especially if the legendaries are tied to that place, the legendaries for that expansion, they're not going to allow people to just go in and do endless amounts and just get their legendaries on day one, week one, whatever you want to call it,
I hope that's not the case. I think you got a 50-50 shot at being right on that, but I hope that's not the case. And I think they could get away with handling it differently than Horrific Visions, because they don't expect you to develop mastery over the system of Torghast, right? There's not like a set number of things that you learn and then you skill up and through it. So, but I think they would be interested in limiting your access to rewards, right? Maybe you only get like X number of runs per week that count towards earning mats for your legendary crafts or whatever the case may be. But I hope that you know, you got to imagine that a system like this is going to be packed with cosmetics and other kind of low impact
Oh,
rewards,
I hope so.
right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So hopefully it's more in the vein of like a dungeon or even an island scenario, whatever. As long as you want to, you can go do it. You could put a party together and queue up for it or whatever the case may be. But you know, there's only so you're limited by how many runs are like high stakes for the week, because they're the ones that impact your access to the good rewards. Sort of like what they've done now with Horrific Visions rewarding corrupted gear at the end of every run, but the item level descends as you repeatedly do it at the same level of difficulty. It's like, well, okay, the first like 3 or 4 I do are really high impact, then I don't care as much. I think that's good, but then visions are still currently bogged down with the kind of weird coalescing vision system, which I feel like is unnecessary now. I can see why they had that at the beginning versus Torghast, like being totally random. Let us just go check it out.
Yeah.
Go on, Fraz, you talk.
I like what Leowild says, that they could cap the legendary related earnings each week, and you could still run them after that, like islands with Azeroth bar. Because I've been running Mythic Islands with cap.
That's a fair enough shout. Yeah, I didn't think about it like that. I mean, as long they have to cap something, you know. I mean, that's the thing. I mean, and that's just putting a cap on anything, whether it's the time to do the main quest story, whether it's a resource that's required to gate the next step. It's going to piss somebody off in some way or another. Like, you're not going to please everybody with the way that Blizzard choose to do it. It's just the way of things, unfortunately. But I kind of like that by capping how much, like just like capping anima, so we could do X amount of anima and then, you know, go onto an alt or whatever and do their stuff for the week. It's just the way that we're going to have to get it. Like, I don't want to have to feel like I have to do, and this again varies from person to person, and I hear it a lot in my guild, because the minute that you turn around and say that I need to do this, someone will turn around and go, well, you don't need to do it, you want to do it. And I was like, yes, because if I'm going to be raiding, yeah, it might only be heroic, but I want my character to be the best it can be, and by doing that and like farming this and whatever, it's the best it can be.
And you don't want people to feel burnout. I like when a game has catcher mechanics that way. If you come in late, they can boost you up. It's nice that like the even like the heart boosts itself up over you the farther you go. But it's nice not feeling like you have to get in and do it all now.
Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. I think about Torghast and I think about Horrific Visions, and my only concern is how would you do what we know as a Horrific Vision to the extent of having it on an expansion wide basis? Like, if we had Horrific Visions at the very beginning of the expansion, would every raid tier give us another map? Would we have to deal with 2 maps for 6 months and then put a third one into the rotation? And then as we get further, because they have to keep the same reward structure and everything else. So once we get all the legendaries from tier 1 in Shadowlands from Torghast, how do they keep Torghast relevant? When we get this next raid patch, do they have to put in more cosmetics? Do they have to put in more legendaries that are tied to Torghast specifically? And then do we get tired of just running Torghast over and over if my brainwave and thinking the worst part of this, that it's just going to look the same internal thing week after week, you know?
Visions wasn't built to be an expansion long feature. And again, like part of it is that there's very little randomization to Visions, yes. Right? Like it's a set basket of things. It picks a couple things out each week and here you go. You know, I think there's opportunities each season, each patch to inject, you know, themed cosmetics, you know, the same way they've kind of done throughout the last couple expansions. But I think BFA is a good example. We got a ton of new pets, cosmetics, mounts, etc. each patch, and they kind of doled them out into different gameplay modes. I think Torghast could be a good catch-all for stuff like that. As far as the rewards go, you know, maybe we get, they haven't said much about itemization yet. In fact, they really haven't said anything about itemization at all. So, you know, season 1, are we limited to that one legendary that we can craft at Torghast? And then maybe season 2, we can equip a second slot. Plus you'll need item level boosts, most likely for them, the same way we kind of did in Legion where you get the currency and then you apply the currency to an item you have to increase it to the current season item level. I think all that stuff would be, it would still make Torghast feel relevant when new stuff came in. It's like, okay, I have some new little things to chase, little cosmetics and just fun rewards. But also I'm working towards this goal of my second legendary slot, and then I need to get my item level upgrade for the legendary that I already have. I think stuff like that could scale over the course of, 3 or 4 seasons a lot better than what, the way Horrific Visions was kind of conceived. I think it's very much tied to the corruption system, the theming of season 4 in Ny'alotha, and I don't think that system as constructed would really work if it was meant to live for like 2 years.
Yeah, but then if you look at stuff that was built to last over 2 years, and like Frazley mentioned earlier, like the island system, like that didn't really. I mean, it
didn't really land. Work. I don't think islands is a very popular feature to begin with. It's kind of cool thematically. The islands themselves look really cool, and it's an interesting delivery method for some cosmetics, but they're still kind of too stingy with them. And it was just this thing of like, well, you do a couple of them a week and you fill up this bar and you get a big chunk of AP. And so it's a really time efficient way to get AP. And it's like, well, yeah, for a couple of weeks and then we don't care about it anymore. I mean, Torghast has to stick, right? It has to be good in the first place for us to care about it.
Do you think that was part of the reason that BFA had this massive failing overall, is that they threw too many new things at the wall and see what stuck? Like with Warfronts, with Islands, with a change on the AP system from Legion.
Maybe. I mean, obviously, like a lot of the stuff that came in with BFA kind of landed flat. I think one of the core problems was just that Azerite armor felt bad. And so everything you did with your character kind of felt bad as a result. You're just always chasing the stuff you already had to get it a little bit better. And like, that just never feels good in these types of games. I don't think that in context of BFA, we really needed island scenarios or Warfront scenarios to be this, weekly or daily gameplay pillar alongside dungeons, raids, and PvP.
Yeah. Because
how many systems are you really going to master that have this kind of element of, learn this meta strategy and execute it over and over again? I'm glad that they were low impact because I spent enough time in the game as it is, and I didn't really want to tack that on. But they were back of the box features, right? Like they did a big floor show at PAX East in 2018. And what were you doing? It was an island thing. Hey, group up with your friends and do some islands. And it's like, well, they were cool to do for a bit, and you just run out of compelling reasons to continue to do them. I don't think Torghast is going to have that problem. I think there's going to be compelling reasons to do it, but the question is going to be, is it fun to do? You can hang an awesome reward on any activity imaginable, but that doesn't mean people are going to like it, but they'll slog through it if they feel rewarded. So it's finding that balance of like, give me a cool thing to do with a cool reward at the end. Conceptually, I think they're on the right track with this, but man, I would love to hear some kind of an update about it.
Yeah. I think as we get closer and closer to, and a big thing that like everybody's going to be talking about this week is how close Shadowlands feels. Wowhead's put out a post saying like they've moved a lot of the old depreciated assets off the PTR. It looks like it's gearing up to be a playable build. Everybody's excited. I don't think everybody realizes they're not going to get into a tight-knit alpha at the very beginning. And you're going to have to watch your favorite content creators, Frazley, myself, the guys over at the Starting Zone, most of your favorite, content creators, I think what a lot of people are looking forward to, and this will probably fall into your niche specifically, Jason, is the changes to the leveling system, as well as including that new starting area for newer players. For the people that don't know who you are, why don't you talk about the Starting Zone, what you do over there, and let us know your thoughts on like the changes to the leveling system that's coming.
Sure. Starting Zone is one of the longest running WoW-focused podcasts that's still in production. Spencer Downey and I have been working on the show together since right before Legion in 2016. We took over for Mick as he departed to go work in the business. It's been great to work on the show. And when we took it over, we kind of wanted to establish our own format and our own voice. And what we kind of wanted to do is just talk about whatever was going on in the game on a given week. You know, we want to be your kind of companion to your week in WoW, and we want to get you excited to play if you're listening at work or whatever you're doing. You know, you're listening away from the game. And so we try to keep it real week to week. Like, okay, what happened last week? What's coming up this week? What do we think about this stuff? And we try to tailor it to, you know, as a pretty wide audience. I wouldn't say that we target any one segment of the player base specifically. We want new players to feel included, and we want them to, but what we really want is to give them some ideas of ways they can expand their horizons in the game, right? And move past that kind of new player, casual player stigma and really get the most out of their time in the game. And also to kind of, you know, from a top end player perspective, walk it back a bit and go, you know, there's a lot more to this game than just spreadsheets and, you know, and raid boss parses and all that stuff. You can actually have fun, and there's stuff to do that's interesting or outside of your routine that can be really cool. So it's been a really fun conversation to have, and we've had great conversations with listeners over the years. And yeah, it's kind of funny, you know, our namesake, the Starting Zone. I mean, when the show started, it was really about advice for new players. The show started in like 2009, and it kind of quickly moved away from that. And I don't know. It's funny too, because, you know, the advice I would give to a new player is like, just go explore and see what you think is cool and get back to me in a few weeks. You know, I would be very hands off with a new player, I think, and just let them figure out what's cool about the game to them. I'm kind of torn about the new leveling experience and the new character experience.
I feel that my biggest concern with it is that a new player, they get this fantastic new starting area. Love that idea. That 1 to 10 new starting area. Absolutely happy with that. My biggest concern is that they're thrown into BFA, which is quite frankly one of the more technically more difficult stories to try and follow if you're trying to throw a new player into something. Yes, it brings the world, yeah, it tells you the story of the current world and they get to go and see something else. But, you know, in terms of leveling, I think, you know, Warlords has a better leveling story to do. Legion is definitely has a better leveling flow, I feel. I'd even go as far to say if you go back to anywhere between Wrath and Mists, at least you have something that's like linear and straightforward, which is probably why they're going to more of a Shadowlands feel with a linear and straightforward path. Because if they move that as the new player experience in the expansion after Shadowlands, and we get that as the 10 to 50 or 10 to 60 push, however they choose to do leveling, then it will tell a story that will make sense because it will be linear for new players. That's my only problem with forcing BFA upon a new player, really.
Yeah, I mean, I think BFA's story is well told, but also there's a lot of baggage that the main characters are carrying into it that might not make sense to you if you've never played any of this stuff before. But, you know, I'm not sure how much of that really matters. I think if somebody's interested to check the game out, they just want to play it, and I do think the BFA leveling experience is good. I mean, when it came out, I remember it was a pretty popular thing. People seemed to really enjoy most of it, so I think that's okay. I have a problem with the scaling world. I don't think the scaling world was a good change. And I think what you're talking about in regards to the BFA level up experience kind of bears that out. And I'm excited to see Shadowlands because the zones have these dedicated level ranges, and moving through a zone and moving into the next zone is character progression in and of itself, because you can tackle challenges that you couldn't have done before, you know, whereas for the last couple years you kind of just go wherever and stuff scales up to you and it all feels the same until you hit max level, and then you fall off a cliff in terms of your character progression until you get some gear. So, you know, scaling world is something that a lot of MMOs use, and it works really well for them. I think WoW lost something significant by going in that direction. I don't expect it to ever get reversed, but I'm glad to see them do something like bringing in the dedicated level ranges per zone, at least the first time through in Shadowlands, because I think it adds a lot of texture and it adds a lot of role-playing and adventure type flavor into leveling up a character and experiencing a new expansion. Like, having these challenges to overcome is important, and having dangerous enemies is a good way to introduce that challenge.
Yeah, because even like the way it is right now, at least if you're in and like going through a zone, you know, not to go to the other zone because it's not going to scale to a point. And like everyone remembers like the plague bear going up to Western Plaguelands and having or is that Eastern Plaguelands? But one of the Plaguelands where you have the bear that runs out after you, and when you have an area that you can't go unless you die, it doesn't feel like you're getting better. And BFA, I feel like I got weaker as I went along. I feel like, okay, I moved into BFA pretty good. Then,
as Mephisto mentioned last week, like the problem with having a scaling world is that when it gets to a certain level, like the game just scales it so far past everything that you're looking forward to. I see what you both said there. My problem is that I feel like they're going to have a linear story because they specifically want to take us from point to point to point to find out what covenants are. I still think that they're going to scale each area to be there's no such thing as out leveling an area. So if you do every little side quest, you find every rare before you move on to an area, you'll go into the next area and everything will still scale to your level regardless of where you are. And I feel like they'll try to do that to try and make the content feel relevant, and then we'll hit the scaling problem again. I like what you said. It would be nice to hit just a linear leveling zone. It would be real nice to go back to that. At least if it does scale and we can choose our own path on alts and everything else, it might mean that starting zone is not going to be as clustered all the time. Because I remember Burning Crusade. I remember like Wrath trying to split that out, you know, like there are those problems, you know. I feel like the best way they did it was Mist, but still with Alliance in one area and Horde in another, it still was laggy as everything and problematic.
I do like that I don't have to go to Warlords exactly at 90 to 100, because like right now on my Vulpera it's at 96. I'm actually using an add-on to go to the best treasures, and like I wish I could be in a different area. Like I had to leave one of the cataclysm zones because I was out leveled that, and right now I want to get through it, and it would be nice to if I could so I'm kind of both sides. Like I'm not saying one's better than the other, but being able to choose the expansion is something that I am excited for on that side. But I want that challenge too. The challenge and then that progression.
I saw something on Reddit today, which is if BFA as a leveling area for the 10 to 50, they'd like it to do everything including the war campaign at max level. Like not saying you get to 50 and have to do the war campaign, but the 10 to 50 is your 3 areas to level, the 3 war zones, and then you experience the war campaign before you cap off at 50. I think that's not a bad thing.
No.
It would like even if it's just finishing the war campaign, I think that would be a good thing to do. I never really thought about it, like because my leveling exploits in the last couple of weeks have literally been how quickly can I hit 120. You know, even so much as the gnome, I had the funnest time because it was literally a bunch of friends just got together, variety of levels. We stuck on party sync. I was just tanking classic Wrath, TBC, Mist dungeons, and then all the way back to classic when we had someone step in. I never touched like anything past opening the garrison from Warlords all the way up to 120, other than getting like the Heart of Azeroth and the first, like the intro to each thing. I didn't even get an artifact weapon on my gnome warrior. It's just like it felt so much more fun, and I feel that it's that way because I'm just worried about the leveling in Legion and BFA. Like I've done it so much that I don't want to do it, and I think Party Sync. It's my first time real playing with it, but it's so much fun.
Oh yeah, I was leveling with my friend Raz, and we were over in Wrathi Highlands, and it was so cool. He was like level 60 plus, and I was here, and we replayed quests, and that was fun. I was leveling with Cap to a couple dungeons, and I had to go down to his level, but that was fun. I got to do some quests over again, and I do like that there's less of that, oh, I'm playing more than you are, so that means that I have to level another character or put a character on hold. I mean, I think even like the Genome project with Michael, if we had party sync from the beginning, I think it would have been a whole different feel.
And you can kind of, it's not exactly the same thing, but you can kind of make your own time walking with it.
Yeah.
You know, I mean,
am-
you get scaled down, so you lose access to your stuff, right? You're at the level that you're at the top end of that bucket, but like, you know, still you could team up with your friend. It doesn't really matter what level everybody's at, as long as you can, as long as whoever's the lowest level is the level that everybody's essentially at. You can go do whatever content they're in. You can help them out, get that character through the content. And if you miss some quests or something, if you still have an XP bar, you get some nice XP from that. The gear rewards and stuff aren't going to be too great, but still, it's a pretty low key way to just hang out with your friends in the game and accomplish something, and that's always a good thing for a while.
I would say that it is technically better than time walking, just for the sheer fact that you get to redo quests, and you get the extra rewards for the sake of doing the quests and everything else. And like, we also found a fun little bug as well. So the monk daily, they get to go back to the thing, and they can just do it. So apparently every time you invite somebody new into your group and every time you reset party sync, that daily resets.
Oh, nice.
Is that a bug, or is that a
Because of the way the party sync works, if the lowest party member hasn't done that quest, it resets for everybody in the dungeon. That's why you can keep getting Halls of Lightning and like do the quest and get somebody else in who's like only just got into Legion and get the Halls of Lightning quest again. So if they're not a monk and they haven't done that daily on that day, you get to do that daily again.
It's weird that they would have access to it as not a monk, but hey, whatever.
It's because of the quest idea. I'm assuming that's the system on how it works and everything else.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, I had so much fun. I was playing with the same group of people that I went and did, most of the same group of people that I did Mist Challenge mode with. So when we got into the Mist dungeons, we had Siege of Nuzan, and we were like, oh, we had so much fun here back in the day. And because I was tanking, I was pulling everything. It reminds me of the fact that with everything going to the same sort of level bucket between different expansions, I hope they change LFG to be any dungeon in that 10 to 50 bracket.
Yeah.
Rather than queuing for a specific expansion.
Yeah, I don't think it would probably be too difficult to round the pools out if it was just like, oh, which expansion did you pick? Well, okay.
They have done that though, haven't they? Have you not seen that on the official armory? They actually have put level brackets in for the older raids and the dungeons. So they have actually given those brackets, which means that even if you get to level 60, BFA raids won't count as legacy content because they'll be in that bracket. They'll still be in that hidden, like, something to 50 bracket, so you're not out leveling it by 10 levels. So it's a little bit... They have level bracketed it out, kind of. I hope it's not the fact that if I get to level 20, I can then have a drop down for TBC dungeons. I get to level 30, I can do Wrath and, in that same sort of bucket type area.
That'd be weird. It would kind of defeat the purpose of the new leveling structure, I mean, now it's like, okay, when you're in this range, you could queue up for TBC or Wrath dungeons, right? And you unlock a couple at a time as you ascend. And so that keeps the bucket of players pretty big because it's everybody within that level range, but now everybody within that level range is going to have 6 expansions to choose from or something potentially. And so the unpopular expansions are going to have pretty long queues if they don't just smash them all together.
Yeah. Whereas what'd be nice is if they even get rid of the having to choose your bucket, it'd just be like the raid finder, like, hey, I want to run all these raids. Like, hey, I want to run all these buckets of expansions, because then that would help get it there.
Having a drop down of 8 sets of dungeons between 10 to 50 is immeasurable.
Yeah.
Like, it'd just be so much easier for it to just stick it all in one queue. And if they want to break it down so that only certain dungeons are available for a certain level bracket, I'd be all right with that too. Since everything still scales, just scale it all the way up to 50. And that way, hell, I would absolutely be happy at level 40 to 50 to get dead mines. I
Yeah,
would
me
have no
too.
problems with going, and thusly, because I'd be able to do that, I can still play with lower level people that are still leveling, and you know, I think that's not a bad situation to have.
No, I don't think there's any downside there. I mean, you have a lot more variety in the pool, right? As you level up in the dungeon queue, like you're not going to get that one dungeon you can't stand over and over again because you leveled into a certain range where it's just more likely or whatever. So I think, you know, we were talking about reward structures earlier. As long as the reward feels commensurate for what you're doing with your tune at the time, I think having access to more dungeons as you level up is awesome because it just adds more variety. You know, I could see them doing maybe like, well, every 2 or 3 levels you get access to a new dungeon from each expansion, and then as you level up, like those dungeons go from orange to yellow to green in terms of the questing before they finally gray out and you don't queue into those anymore, and then you're unlocking a handful of new dungeons from each expansion every so many levels. That could work too. It would create sort of the you know, the current mid-50s problem where you don't want to queue in any of those dungeons that you get stuck with
True,
in the
it would
mid-50s.
deal with a lot of those problems, yeah.
Yeah,
But I
but
mean, we then got to see how Shadowlands dungeons are going to be as well. Like, I imagine it's going to be the same thing that we've had for the last couple of expansions since, like, Warlords, where you don't get the quest until you finish questing in a given zone to go and do that dungeon, and then there'll be dungeons that'll unlock at max cap and everything else. So who knows? It's definitely going to be interesting. From what we know so far about Shadowlands, Jason, is there anything that you're looking forward to specifically to like dig into if you get into the alpha?
oh man, that's a tough question. I got to admit that my Shadowlands hype is pretty low overall. Like I think I'm less excited for this than any Warcraft expansion in the history of WoW. Not necessarily because I don't think it's gonna be good or because I don't want new stuff to do, but we just haven't heard enough. You know, I don't know what to get excited about. We kind of talked Torghast to death, I feel like, this evening based on like what we know about it currently.
Yeah.
And like, I think
Well,
Torghast is the big, like, that's the bullet point feature that I really want to check out. You know, the stuff they talked about at BlizzCon sounds cool, but I mean, to me, I guess what it's shaping up to be like is our Covenant's going to deliver. Our Covenant's going to be the thing to keep you logging in every day and that feel, even if they don't feel super fun, do they feel rewarding? Do they keep you invested in your character? And that's the question for me. So I would say, I mean, Torghast, I think is the headline feature that I really want to check out the most. And I think generally the expansion is going to hinge on how fun is it to interact with your Covenant and power up your Soulbind and do all the stuff that you're supposed to be doing in that hub.
Yeah.
If that's cool, I think Shadowlands will be a great expansion. And if it feels like more trouble than it's worth, then it's going to be a long couple of years.
I don't want the daily and the weekly grind to be so massive. Like, we know that there's going to be a cap on anima of like 1,000 or something, whatever it's going to be. But I don't want that bar to feel like everything I do in the Shadowlands world feels like if I'm not doing an event in a current like 8.3 assault where it's like 1% per thing. You know, it needs to be, I've put my time in, you know, it hasn't taken 8 hours to finish over the course of a week. I put my time in, it's done. You know, I can focus on everything else that the game has to offer. Like, as long as the game rewards me for the time I put into it, peel back a lot of those RNG layers, allow me to do the stuff in a sit-in and be done, and so I can move on and do something else in the game. If Blizzard want people to play the game, it has to be freeing enough for us to play the game how we want to do it. So if a player wants to sit there and do one character, they've got enough to do on one character. If Frazley wants to play 1 billion no-molts, then he's got the ability to turn around and level all of no no-molts and not be punished for it, you know, while still doing anything he wants to do in the end game. Like, I just don't want to be punished for playing the game. And that's what, with the busy work with artifact systems in Legion and the Azeroth system in BF8, it feels like it's punishing you by not playing the game.
Well, that's the tricky balance, right? Is how do you make the game engaging and compelling for, you know, a single character player versus a player with a big alt stable, and those players have very different needs. And I think the average customer is really in the former category, and they really just have one character that they really invest in. So Legion was my favorite era of the game ever, going back to day one. And I'm a little bit less sour on BFA than a lot of people because I am the dedicated main player. Like, I have the character I like to invest all the time in. I want to get every single possible thing done on that character that I can, and everything else is just kind of, whatever. If I feel like messing around on an alt or something, I'll do it. But I don't care about having them at some kind of parity in terms of power or progression. There is this pendulum that kind of swings back and forth between, okay, grind as much as you want, but you have a weekly cap, versus, well, you have all these daily activities to do, but there's catch-up mechanics, so you're not punished too badly if you miss them or if you log in once every 3 days to clean up the map. We've swung all the way that way now, and I remember the days of the weekly badge caps and all that, and you'd want to log in early in the week and just grind stuff out so you could cap your badges. I don't know if that kind of particular thing works in this day and age. Maybe it does, but I think I also wouldn't want to see that return 1-to-1 either. I think there could be opportunities to reward players for taking a deep dive, right? And it's like, you want to just invest. I have the time today, and I want to invest time in this character, and I want to meet my goals for this period of time. This reset week, for example. Yeah, that would be awesome. I think, having more opportunities like that where you could just really dig deep on a character, accomplish those goals, and then feel like you can, use your time differently for the rest of the reset week. I think that's awesome. I do have concerns, like when they come out on stage and they say, well, we want to make this expansion more alt-friendly. I hear there's not going to be a lot to do. That's just what I hear in my brain.
Yeah, I can get that.
So,
I do hear that.
I just want more info, man. We're 5 months post BlizzCon. Give me a blog post. I know we got alpha any day now, probably. We might get alpha this week.
Maybe get alpha tomorrow.
Yeah,
based on the day that we're recording this on Sunday, we could have it as early as Monday.
Sorry, April Fools.
Oh,
yeah, you're only about 5 days out.
Oh, phooey.
Could you imagine if Wowhead had dropped that info on April Fool's Day and Alpha's live? What? The world would go insane.
They should have pushed that for real, like just because that would have been hilarious if they did that.
Yeah, because Apple Inc. was founded on April Fool's Day, and I know like Cloudflare, who like the 1.1.1.1 and 1.2.2.1. They are 1.0.0.1. I'm getting all techie.
I get what you're saying. They have to find when they're my words are in the bin. I've taken them out of my mouth, out of my brain, and I've thrown them in the bin. When their core dynamic for tracking a player is how much time they spend in game, there needs to be a balance between, hey, we've got them playing all their alts. Oh, they're only in their garrison doing garrison missions. To, oh, we've got one person doing everything in the world. They're on all the time. There has to be a nice balance that they need to find between there. And again, goes back to what we said at the beginning. You're not going to please everyone with the choices that you make, but you have to please enough of your player base that they're going to keep playing. And yes, there's going to be a spike of interest when a new expansion launches and everybody goes into the floodgates, does the content, disappears, and comes back on a patch-by-patch basis. But those people that have probably still here are probably those people that are still playing since Classic WoW, and they're still here because they've got player investment. They like what they're not that worried that the story's going. But like me, they play the game because it's $9.99 a month for and I get to still play a game as much as I want, rather than dumping £60, $60 dues, $60 pounds, 60 moon bucks on a new game every week or every month and be done in 12, 15 hours. I've made a lot of friends in this game, and a lot of them are still playing. I've met a load of new people in this game, especially through the cast, and I talk to them. Yeah,
I think the core loop of the game is still strong. People get, some people are kind of they're just kind of rubbernecking, right? There's a lot of people who WoW is like the worst X they've ever had, and all they want to do is just dump on it when it's convenient to do so. I think there's a broad section of players who just want to check out what's new, and then they'll circle back when there's new stuff. And beyond that, I think there is still a really strong loop for the dedicated player. And I mean, it's going to have ups and downs, and BFA certainly had more downs than ups. I think it's finishing on a strong note. But it wasn't. I think anything coming on the heels of Legion was going to be a bit of a letdown. Legion was a tough act to follow. And BFA sort of fell into some of the worst pitfalls of Legion without addressing some of the opportunities for improvement. But at the end of the day, people get vocal about this stuff because they're passionate about it. They love the game and they want it to be the thing that they want it to be. The problem is what I want it to be is different than what anybody else wants it to be, right? And it can be hard to step outside your sort of play style or your perception and say, well, this really works well for me, but I understand why people don't like it. That's a tough step to take. I mean, I think if you do this kind of stuff and you talk to people from different kind of walks of WoW life, you sort of broaden your horizons. You go, yeah, well, some people just log in and fish and collect transmog and they love it, and
that's what they paid to play the game for, right? Because it's a chill experience for them.
And there's nothing wrong with that. And I don't envy Blizzard's position of having to serve this many different kinds of play styles. And it's inevitable that they're going to have missteps and that some choices are going to be more popular than others. I don't know. I feel like we're just in such a weird spot right now at the end of BFA. It's been a tough couple of years to cover this game and to play it on a regular basis and just have to deal with the onslaught of negativity, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I've certainly had, I've had my complaints, but overall I've enjoyed my time in the game. But, some people just, they see somebody else having a good time and they want to ruin it, right?
So I feel like myself more than most, I've enjoyed 8 point taking away everything that we've had in terms of buffs in the last 3-4 weeks. I think since 8.3 has launched, I've enjoyed this expansion more. I've always enjoyed the raiding. I've always enjoyed doing the dungeon running on the first time. I've enjoyed Mythic Plus a lot more this patch. I've enjoyed Horrific Visions to the point that I did all my 5 masks, and I was first in the guild to get the Mad World stuff, but not like first on the server by far, or not first in the raid group. But stuff like that where I can push, I enjoy it. I've enjoyed 8.3. Yeah, there's been problems, but I've enjoyed it. Not to the level that I enjoyed other stuff, but there's been specific memories behind other expansions that make it more favourable. And as I'm sure that's the same for everybody else. That's why everybody has a favourite expansion for one reason or another, as we've discussed on the cast many, many times.
Yeah, and I've certainly had I've been in the throes of the final patch of an expansion, just counting the days, man. When are we going to get something? I don't feel that way right now. And I feel like I have plenty of stuff I want to do. And I feel comfortable with the timeline that we're on. And that was not the case in 2013 and, 2015. There were some dark times in the middle of last decade for this game when we're stuck in the last patch for over a year. And they're just, the loop just wasn't quite there. I think, yes, BFA certainly has its warts, but I think we're set up better to survive this drought into Shadowlands than in previous years.
I think that's because if they keep dropping stuff like the XP buff and they do various other things, if they just decide to elongate this with the world's goings on and everything else, they elongate the buff, no one's going to complain. No. They'll thank Blizzard for it. If they decide to drop... even if they decide to elongate it and add in a 50% rep buff across the board, nobody's going to complain. If anything, it's going to encourage people to go and do the stuff that they want to do. People want to get their allied races before the expansion's done,
Yeah.
So the amount of stuff I see on Reddit of how do I go get Pathfinder from this expansion? It's such a pain. It's such a chore. How I want to get my allied races before this expansion, but I don't want to grind for a month to get Volpera. People want to play the game, but they don't want to feel punished for it. Hell, I'd say even if Blizzard turn around on next reset and put in the rep buff to the world quest that they did for the end of Legion, like when BF8 came out, no one's going to complain. It won't be as strong as they want, but it'll be a nice rep buff based on the difficulty of the world quest.
Yeah, I mean, I'm firmly in camp, and I've been pounding this drum on TSZ the last couple of weeks. Just leave this, just come out in front of this, and just leave the buff on until 9.0. Just leave it. This is the last time leveling's ever going to be like this. We're saying goodbye to the old leveling system. Let's go out with a bang. Give people a chance to, like you said, work on our allied races, do whatever they want. Because it's, I mean, you know, the world's crazy outside. WoW is a nice refuge from that. And having more options in WoW always feels good. So now you have the option to play whatever character you want and do whatever you want with it. It's great. And I can't imagine anybody trying to gatekeep that and saying, well, I leveled up when it took way more time. So,
you know, there will be though, don't you? You know,
I'm sure there's somebody who has an opinion, but I can't imagine how unpopular that must be, you know, to express something like that. Like this is great for everybody. It's good for new players. It's good for the curious, you know, it's good for returning players. It's good for invested players. It's just super fun to play a character and run around and level up, and you just watch that bar fill up, man. Just, you know, you get like a couple levels an hour sometimes. Like,
I know, I like the ding sound effect is still so good. Like on my Discord, whenever someone gets a new level through our Discord bot, I have a YouTube video of the ding sound, because that ding sound, there's just something magical to it.
It's true. Although anyone that's not, like, can you imagine if they keep on the 100% buff all the way through 9.0? All the WoW page on Twitch is going to be, it's either going to be Shadowlands Alpha when leveling my alt,
yes,
just leveling my alt streams. That's all it's going to be. Maybe the odd raid here or there. Anyway, that has been it for this episode of Stories Around Azeroth. Jason, where can they find you around the internet if they want to go looking for you?
So, first of all, thank you guys for inviting me. Pleasure to sit down with you today and talk some WoW. So thank you for having me on. If your listeners want to check out other stuff that I'm doing, you can find me on Twitter over at Shieldwalled. You can also find me on twitch.tv/Shieldwalled, streaming raids and dungeons and leveling and who knows what else. I want to plug a couple of shows that I'm working on. The Starting Zone being the primary show, the WoW show, which would be relevant to your listeners' interests. You can find that at The Starting Zone on Twitter. You can find it at thestartingzone.com. You can find the feed on your podcatcher of choice. You can find us on Spotify and iTunes and Google and all those other places. New episodes every Tuesday night, and just talking whatever's new and notable. And also, I want to plug a show I've been working on called Reforged Radio with Kyle Ferguson. You can find that over on his website at kyleferguson.com, 2 S's in Ferguson, or on your podcatcher of choice. Reforged Radio is all about Warcraft 3, and we're talking about gameplay mechanics, we're talking about lore and story, and we're talking about all kinds of stuff. We just wrapped up season 1 of that show, and you can find the season 1 finale up on the feed now. And we'll be back at it in a few weeks with some more stuff. That show is going to take a bit of a broader tack around the Warcraft universe as we go. So it's been really fun, and I hope people dig it.
Nice. I haven't even turned on Reforged yet. It's still sitting on my Blizzard launcher. I haven't even had a chance to get around to it.
I need to play more of that, because I want to tell all the characters and all the story, because I enjoyed my playthrough that Wednesday when it came out.
I want to play it just so I can go and kick Michael's ass at it.
Good, because Michael kept kicking my butt.
Yeah. Frazley, where can they find you around the internet if they're going to be looking for you?
On Twitter at Frazlytastic. You can find my podcast Frazlycast. When I'm not here, I'm over on Frazlycast talking with different people around Azeroth and just kind of seeing who they are, what they like. And then when I'm not doing that, I'm streaming about once a day at gnome.live, and you can see me playing right now WoW, other games except for Fridays and Saturdays. I've been stuck to WoW leveling. So I mean,
haven't we all?
other games? I'm not familiar with the term.
Yeah. Well, Warcraft 3 Reforged technically is another game.
I played Warcraft 3 like 18 years ago, so that's fine.
Ladies and gentlemen, as always, you can find me at Titans Creed on the main account at Gaming Phoenix if you just want videos and uploads and Twitch streams and all that good thing if you want to look at my face. If you don't, this podcast will be available every Wednesday in the normal places. Otherwise, you can catch the vidcast on youtube.com/Project Phoenix Productions. And if you do want to look at my face, I'll be around on twitch.tv/Project Phoenix Productions whenever I decide to turn the stream on so you can look at my face. Ladies and gentlemen, a big thank you once again to Jason from the Starting Zone. You can, as I said, you can find him on Shieldwalled. His name has been above his head through the entire show. Amazing, that. Technology is a thing. Until next time, ladies and gentlemen, it has been an absolute honor and privilege. Thank you very much for coming on the show again. Until the next time, ladies and gentlemen, as Mr. Frazley likes to say,
be awesome.